Awesome. So now we need to make a for loop to go over each of these big pieces to subdivide them in a way that makes sense for doing the big ones, which again is going to be splitting them every which way, gluing them together, and then packaging them all up again so that they can all move together at first. So let me show you what I mean. It doesn't work right now because it's saying we're looking for a piece attribute and it's looking for a primitive piece attribute. I'll just turn off piece attribute. Now it's going to run 29 times because there are 29 apparently big pieces, and as we can see that that's true here. 29 big pieces, each iteration is going to work on one of them. And also like before, I'm going to say single pass, let's find one that I think is interesting. Let's find a big one in this case, because that's going to be the kind of piece we're going to notice the most in our sim. So we'll tailor our settings to that is what I'm saying. And before we even go down there, let us make another cool box around this, and I'll say determine sizes. And there we go. Awesome. All right, so let's get started. So this is going to be one of the bigger parts of the lesson where we subfracture this, but it's really just going to use a lot of the same principles we've already done. The first things first is we're going to need to unpack it. We can't do anything to pack geometries. We got to unpack it so it comes back to being cool, fun polygon land. And like before, we're going to ISO offset it. I'm just going to give it some more samples just in case it's too small. And we're going to have to come up with some amount of points to scatter into it. Now, we could say how many points we want per piece, but probably in this case, we're going to want to turn off force total count and rely on the density scale instead. Unclear how many points we want, but I would say right off the bat, this is too many, because remember each one of these is going to become a cutting plane. Oops, put a space there instead. So let's go a lot lower than this. This is 30,000 points, so that's not going to work. Let's just go a few even orders of magnitude lower. Okay, so that's already a huge improvement. So that's 27 points at 0.01. That's probably still too many. We could even put a force, or rather a maximum points here, where we could say, no matter what, don't have more than, let's say 18 of these. So now it kicks out a warning, hit emergency limit of 18 points. So just in case this is too high or something, like we made our best bet, we still came up with a number too high, we still won't blow ourselves up by accident. So 0.01 gives us 17 because it's limited here. That's probably good for now. Let's just stick with that. And now we're going to make we want to copy to points like we did before. We're going to make a grid, but this time we don't have the luxury of just messing around with, actually this should go here. We don't have the luxury to mess around with how big the grid should be. This is how our pieces are going to vary wildly now. So I want to at least say, I don't want my grids to ever be too big, and we certainly never want it to be too small. So our best bet is to err on the side of being too big, because at least it'll do the cut then. So let's, as we've been doing, set the orientation to YZ. That way we can use the normal here to randomize our attributes. So put that there. We don't want to randomize color, we want to randomize the normal. We want to do it inside the sphere, and we don't want to copy over the normals to these things. So here we go. But again, obviously they're too small. How big should we make it? Well, the only information we really need is how big, what are the dimensions? What is the bounding box of the piece that we're working on currently? So here's the bounding box, size XYZ. Let's just say whatever the biggest bound is, as long as we're like twice or even 3 times as big as that, we can't go wrong. We'll always have a grid that's big enough if we are like 2.5 times as big as this. We could even be more accurate than that, but that's just an even easier way of doing it. We could find the hypotenuse of the bounding box if we wanted to. So we're gonna make it be a square. We're not gonna make it be like a rectangle or anything. So we'll just go ahead and do that preemptively. So I'm going to press Alt-E here to bring up the edit expression editor, just to make it a little easier to follow along. I'm going to say, get me the bounding box of unpack1. In particular, get me the X size. So I'm going to say something like, let's just return the maximum of the X. So what's bigger? The X size of the bounding box or the Y size of it? And this whole max thing here will return that. Whatever's bigger, X or Y, which in this case is this number bigger or this number bigger? Now that doesn't take into account Z, so we can simply do a max around that and then do this bounding box thing again with Z. And that's it. So we do that, and now you can see 22.985. And if I middle click this, sure enough, 22.985 is the biggest dimension. So like I said, I'm just gonna multiply a big old number times that. So X and Y are both that. The rows and columns can be that times 2, of course. And now we've got a big old grid copied to all these points, and there you go. So we have, here was the original piece, here are the grids all around it, and now we can be sure that that's going to work. So jumping ahead, we can drop our Boolean down, do the same things, and we could be copying it from before, but just so you get used to it, remember it's a solid versus a surface, we're shattering it, we're not going to do these things here. We do want to store the new surfaces that are being created. So we just say, give me the unpacked geometry. I'll move this over a little bit. Give me the unpacked geometry, shatter it based on these surfaces that we just made. And we're going to noise them up, of course. And that will be our output. So let's just make sure that it's working so far before we get too far ahead. And there we go. A whole bunch of shattered pieces. So let's name them. We have names already on these things. Let's make new names based off of the old name and just say like we're a sub piece of that thing. So I'm going to go right ahead. I'm going to use my connectivity this time and say make our class piece, which will again designate a number for each new piece. And let's use a wrangler to create the name. And we'll base it off of the old name back here when it had its point name. So basically going to say rename. We'll say store whatever the name used to be. So we'll just call it old name. And that's, we're going to get it from the point, remember, and we're getting from input 1. And remember always that in computer science, 0 is the first thing, 1 is the second thing. So 1 is referring to this noodle, this input noodle here. So get me the name and get it from primitive 0. Primitive 0, because there's only one primitive anyway. So just get it from the only one that's there. And we can say the new name, which will just be name, is going to be, we can use sprintf, sprintf, to do like some text modification stuff. %s is going to be replaced with a string underscore another s, which is going to be replaced with another string. So we can say like sub that, something like that. So we'll put the old name first, comma, that class attribute that we made. Cool. So you can see it'll be the old name underscore sub underscore the piece number that it just came up with. And you'll see that here. Cool. So there we go. We can assemble that. We have created our own names. We could turn this off, but turn the create packed on based on the name. So we came up with 262 points, 662 new pieces even, from that operation. Let's just take a quick look at what they look like. And there we go. Now they don't look great yet because those cutting planes were straight, but we can see that it's working. And it's gonna do that for every big piece that's in here.